But now I try very much to stay and do the projects that are the right size. So if you can handle a project that's 1 acre, your next project should be 2 acre, 3 acre. You don't jump from 1 acre to 10 acres or 12 acres. I did. That was a huge mistake. So whenever you hear, just run with it, just go with it or run with it, or big cliches, like, you can handle it, you can shoot for the moon, shoot for the stars and shoot for the sky and all that stuff. That's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. You don't have a proper plan. If you don't know how to start and how you're going to finish, and you don't have all the steps in the middle lined up, you should not be starting a project. And that's something I learned. And now, if I can do a 2 acre project, I go the other way. I might just do an acre project. I might do a half acre project. Why? Because it's within my means. And I know I can finish it off. It's good to be ambitious, but being over ambitious can also get you huge losses. So it's good to be ambitious, but you've got to match your ambition with your capabilities, financial, as well as other capabilities.
Salim Development Group.
Hi guys, I'm Tahir Salim, CEO of Salim Development Group. So anyway, today I want to start our discussion with the successes that I've had. And then afterwards, we'll talk about some of, I guess, not so successful projects, but we're going to start off with success. We're going to talk about 2 main projects. And the first one will be the very first project that I ever did in the real estate development. That was a Wiener Schnitzel that I built in Murrieta, California. What makes that project so special is that I didn't have the background of a real estate developer. I did have some background. I was a city of Los Angeles employee. I was an associate engineer in the environmental engineering department. So I got some knowledge on how to navigate the city approval processes, how to go and have set up meetings with different officials in the city, and also what is the planning to permitting process. Anyway, so having that knowledge in my back pocket, I started the Wiener Schnitzel Murrieta planning. I met with the planning department. Luckily, I did not need a full-blown planning commission hearing, but I did need a discretionary hearing with the city of Murrieta. At the time, I did not realize how lucky I was that was the case, because most projects do require a full-blown hearing for most of the projects in California that are either car washes or drive-thru. Anyway, some challenges. One of the biggest challenges was my knowledge was limited. Financing was very difficult, and interest rate that I got for that project was 11.25%. So the interest rates were much higher at that time. It was 11.25%. And my goal was that I was making a certain salary, and then my goal was to meet or exceed the salary that I was making with the city of Los Angeles. And if I didn't make that kind of profits, I would no longer work to Los Angeles. Which I leave absence, opened the restaurant, and it did really well, beyond my imagination. It did at least twice as much as the amount of money I was earning as an engineer with City of LA. Well, needless to say, very shortly thereafter I resigned, and I started working full-time as a real estate developer henceforth. Anyway, I learned a lot from that project, but that project ended up being one of our most successful stores even to this day. So I was very lucky that my first project was that successful. But there's some things that went into it from day one. I was very cautious about the finances, so I made sure the costs stayed in line, even though I did not have a lot of experience in construction. I knew a little bit about construction because I was working with City of LA, and there were some contractors or subcontractors that would come in and we would supervise them. But I did not have a direct experience with contractors or subcontractors. But I understood that I got to put the costs in control, and I did. That was very helpful. Second thing that was very important was a feasibility study. I had never done a feasibility study, but my common sense told me that I got to understand what I'm building is going to make more income than my expenses. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? So I did a feasibility study. It wasn't very formal. When I looked at the area, saw how many other Wiener Schnitzels there were, and there wasn't one close by. So I knew that we would not be, or I would not be cannibalizing anybody else's sales. Anybody else would be cannibalizing our sales. So I would not be competing with another Wiener Schnitzel franchise. Secondly, I knew was the people had the income, and the product that we were selling at Wiener Schnitzel, hamburgers, hot dogs, drinks, and ice cream and all that was not in other restaurants' minute. That was also a good thing. And I also knew that kind of food was welcome by the Murrieta community, and that was a good estimation. It turned out that was our perfect customer. And one key reason for our success was not only that it was a great location, but the right demographics. The people who wanted to eat the food that we were going to be producing, it was a perfect match. So anyway, Wiener Schnitzel in Marietta was a huge success. Also, the city I worked with, city officials, they were very helpful. And also, I think my approach towards that was also good. So they were very helpful to me. I went in there, I was very young. I was 32 years old. And I was very, very humble the way I approached them and the way I asked for their help. And they were eager to help. I think had I been arrogant or acted if I knew everything because I was an engineer and I've been working for 9-10 years as an engineer, it may not have been as helpful. But I didn't approach them that way. And that created a very good relationship. Also, even though I didn't have a lot of experience, I did search and interviewed several contractors. And the contractor we used actually was a really good contract to do the construction. So anyway, it was built on time, in budget, and the sales were extraordinary. When we opened, I was hoping for doing certain amount of sales. We exceeded those sales by about 30%. So the project was, again, a huge success. And even to this day, when I think about it, I had a lot of fond memories. And obviously, the financial part is very, very good. But even besides the financial part, I have really good memories because of it being my first restaurant, ground construction. A lot of relationships were built based on that restaurant. That restaurant being so successful allowed me to build more restaurants in the future. The experience I got allowed me to use that experience to do not only additional restaurants in the future, but additional projects. So anyway, it was success all around. Second thing I want to talk about is a car wash that I did not too long ago. A car wash that I built in Anaheim. I really should say we because my sons are my partners, but I'm the one who's kind of leading them in the way. But they're my partner. My son works very diligently with me in car washes, in Zoe. But anyway, the Anaheim car wash was a huge success for many reasons. One is this was our third car wash. I had built 2 car washes. One was at Clinton Keith where it was a hand car wash. I actually lost money in that wash. Whatever cost it was billed for, we ended up selling the real estate for less than what it was billed for, maybe 9 or 10 years later, about 9 years later. So it was definitely not a success. And there were many factors for that. One of the factors was in the full-service car wash. And full-service car wash, after the last 15 years, have been on the downward trend because the labor costs are so high that it's, unless you have a lot of cars that you're washing and the clientele is able to afford, a certain level of ticket, it's not going to do well. You don't have the right clientele. And anyway, so the first car wash we built was in Clinton Keith, in Clinton Keith, and in Riverside County in Wilderwood. I basically lost probably $300,000-$500,000 from how much the actual cost was. Still, great experience, but learned a lot about which type of car wash not to do. We're not doing full service. Secondly, learned a lot about the equipment of car washes. And I learned tremendously about the location. And I believe the location was not the best location it should have been. It had several problems with the location in terms of its elevation, its site plan, size of it. And obviously, I don't want to go into really great details because of the limited amount of time. But there were some issues with the site, which I learned much more about it after I had built it and after I had more experience. So that was the first element. Second car wash was built in La Habra, California, which I built and sold within 6 months to a year after it was completed. And it was a positive experience. We made money, but not a lot. It wasn't the kind of money that I would want to make because a lot of efforts were put into doing that project. But it was a successful project. We made profit, so we got all our expenses back, plus a little bit of profit, but nothing tremendous. But then the car wash after that was Anaheim, best car wash. And that was extremely successful. It made everything very worthwhile. And I guess the third time is a charm, and it was a charm. So I have great memories thinking about it. And the other reason I feel really good about it is because there were so many challenges with that car wash to develop. There were other people who were looking to do the car wash, and they had actually bought or put that property in escrow, canceled that smoke, backed out because of how complex that car was. It had restrictions, it had issues, I should say, with the site because it was an environmentally sensitive site. So in order to build a car wash, many things had to be done environmentally. There was ongoing monitoring that we had to do to make sure that the groundwater does not get contaminated, or at least to measure that everything was being done properly and there was no risk. And so anyway, the California environmental departments were involved and we have to get their clarification. Second thing I had to do do something called a deed restriction, where we voluntarily, or I voluntarily agreed that we will restrict that property be ever developed for multifamily or single-family residence. So if nobody can live there, the risk to anybody who develops much lower because nobody's living there and it's only commercial. So I'd do a deed restriction voluntarily, which means, like I said, for decades to come, nobody can develop it as a multifamily. Even if car wash wasn't it. Another thing that was very challenging was the site. The site was not a regular shape site. It was sort of a semi-oval shaped site. So the site kind of was very difficult. Again, the site was in escrow before, and other people were trying to make sense of how to do the right site plan. They weren't able to do it. We're able to do a very good job and a very, very creative site plan that we came up with. And we did it. I built a car wash. We sold it in 2 different sections. I sold the business and I also sold the real estate. The financial rewards were tremendous and did that well. So anyway, that is the most successful 2 projects I've done. Now let's talk about 3 projects that have been not my best projects. And I will start from the first one. The first one was Bubba's Chicken. I put 300,000 hours plus a ton of hours, me and my staff. We opened a restaurant, but I was a silent partner. I was not the person who was leading that project. I was the investor, basically. So I was 1/3 partner, 2 other people. We were putting in the money and doing the development, but not the operation. Well, needless to say, the operations was a disaster. And I will never, ever do business with people who I feel do not have a great history. So I don't mind being a silent partner with somebody in the future, but I have a great history of their success. In this case, there were a total of 5 Bubba's Chicken. The one in San Diego, that closed. The one in Norwalk, that closed. The one that we did, obviously. And one other that was done was also closed. So only one that was made open was the first one, which was at Riverside. And I realized much later that that location was just such a good location that whatever you put there is going to do all right. Just the one in Food Lab is done well. And that's pretty much the only one. The 4th one I was missing was the one in Costa Mesa. That one, I just have a huge bad vibe about that process and that experience. The other 2 experiences that were very challenging, where I was going to develop 20 acres, we put in escrow and bought property in Bakersfield, and I was going to be doing multifamily there and possibly commercial. Huge mistake. This was about 15 years ago. Bubba's Chicken was maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago. But I'm talking about the other one was 15 years. Many mistakes were made. One of them was that the land was too green. What that means is I bought the land toward the development purposes. That land should have been developed now, 15 years later, not when I started working. That was a big mistake. Second thing that I didn't realize was the complexity. The 20-acre development takes a lot of money, not just buying the land, but the cost for engineering, architectural, the city fees out rampant, different departments, all the other studies we have to do, the biological study, the noise study, the environmental impact report, which is the city is asking us to do. Another name for that is EIR. That's expensive. And then once you have an EIR or an environmental impact report, then you have to mitigate whatever issues that come up, have to mitigate. Or by another word, it has to be issues that can result in your planning for the project. So we just say at the finances, the economy went south, and that project was a disaster. Thank God that I had not borrowed money from the bank. That project, the land was basically, I talked to the person I bought it from originally, and I gave it back to them, and I lost a lot. But my credit was protected because I did not have a bank loan, and I did not default on any loan. So that was the best thing that came out of it was learning that you got to have the capital, and secondly, make sure and protect your credibility and do not default any. Another project I want to talk about around the same time was I sold a property and bought another property in Palmdale, about 12 acres, to do commercial real estate development. Again, the same issues to agree. That project should be done about now or another 5 years from now. I started doing it 13 years. Way too early to do a large project. Would have been just a gas station in area where it's not super developed. That would be okay. But I wanted to do a shopping center, and that wouldn't have been okay. So that was one mistake. Secondly, didn't understand or didn't realize how big and how complex that project would be. Because I figured if I could do a half acre or an acre project, I could do a 12-acre project. I was very, very mistaken. And the costs were tremendous, exorbitant. And also the complexity, putting all the pieces together, having tenants to lease up the space and pre-leasing, it didn't help. And I had done a 1031 exchange. I wanted to save the money so I didn't have to pay money. I didn't have to pay taxes on the gain. And that's why I went out, used that money in a much larger project as a down payment. And I had the seller carry back. I had to give that property. Lost $1.2 million on that one. And by the way, the previous project, I lost $1.1 million. Huge losses. Set me back years and years. Thank God I still had some businesses that I was operating, were very successful businesses. And that's how I got back into doing other projects. But now I try very much to stay and do the projects that are the right size. So if you can handle a project that's 1 acre, your next project should be 2 acre, 3 acre. You don't jump from 1 acre to 10 acres or 12 acres. I did. That was a huge mistake. So whenever you hear, just run with it, just go with it or run with it, or big cliches, like, you can handle it, you can shoot for the moon, shoot for the stars and shoot for the sky and all that stuff. That's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. You don't have a proper plan. If you don't know how you're going to start and how you're going to finish, and you don't have all the steps in the middle lined up, you should not be starting that project. And that's something I learned. And now, if I can do a 2-acre project, I go the other way. I might just do an acre project. I might do a half-acre project. Why? Because it's within my means. And I know I can finish it off. It's good to be ambitious, but being over-ambitious can also get you huge losses. So it's good to be ambitious, but you've got to match your ambition with your capabilities, financial, as well as other capabilities. So not only you should live within your means, but do projects that are within your means. So that's the thing I learned. But I learned that from not my successes, but I learned that from my hall of failure, I guess I would have a hall of failure. I don't know what else to call it. So now I want to talk about our current developments and current projects. So we are under construction for a Dutch Brothers where we are the landlord. We are not the franchisee because I don't believe Dutch Brothers even franchise. So we are the land. But that Dutch Brothers is a very special Dutch Brothers where I talked about it before. It was very creative. We were doing a triple drive-through in order to have higher throughput on the cars that could be accommodated at one time, and also to have a lot of cars in the queue. So that Dutch Brothers is really cool. And the other thing is where it's located right on the freeway on one side and Hammer on the other side. I think it's just going to be a whole lot. Second thing is we're doing is the Fredden's in Norco right next to Dutch Brothers. We think that the leadership over there is successful. We think the Dutch Brothers will be huge success, and we hope that Freddy's will also be successful. Again, same thing, great visibility, freeway on one side, Hammer on the other side, Dutch Brothers right next to it. So we'd have a huge draw, and Dutch Brothers would help Freddy's, Freddy's would help Dutch Brothers. I think it's going to be a huge success. Let's see. We'll talk about it once it's open to share how was it as successful as we thought it was going to be, or was it even more successful, or was it less? Anyway, we'll talk about that once we are open. Another project we're working on right now is Freddy's in Fontana. We're building a Freddy's. In fact, it's almost done. And we should be open around the 16th of January coming up. Another project we are doing is a Starbucks for Starbucks. We're not the franchisee, but we will be the developer. So that we hope to be a huge success. And it gives us a lot of credibility when we're working with companies like Starbucks or Dutch Brothers or Habit Burger. So another project we're working on is a car wash. It's a Tommy's car wash. And we hope to be open in a few months. And that's going really well. Two other very unique projects we're doing. Well, we're trying to do EV charging station on our existing lot. We've been doing a lot of research, and we are planning to do an EV charging station. We're researching on charging stations, one that are high capacity, basically charging really fast. So the fastest chargers that are available, we're researching for those. But anyway, we'll probably be putting in 12 parking stalls for 6 chargers, which will charge 12 cars. So that project, I'm looking very much forward to. If that becomes a successful project, and we'll expand that other locations, we hope that's a huge success. And the other project we're working on is a wiener schnitzel in Barstow, where we plan to put a wiener schnitzel right close to a Freddy's, and we hope that's a very big success. And is now expected to be a super busy wiener schnitzel right off the bat, because of the traffic patterns of the people going north on I-15. And a lot of people stop off east side of the freeway in Barstow on Linwood, and we're on the west side. But I think as time goes on, people's traffic patterns will evolve once they know that we are on the west side. That might take a couple of years, but we're in it for the long haul. Sometimes your projects are not immediately successful. I already know that. That's not going to just be a great location right at the beginning, but I think it will be over time. And also, as a reminder to myself, Las Vegas traffic is going up every year. Like year over year, it gets busier, 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 busier. So even after recessions, when the recession ends, the newer highs are higher than the previous highs. So overall, it's still always going up. I expect that or hope for that we as to be very successful. Another was something very unique. We were able to get a very wide pylon sign on the freeway, and we were able to convince the city of Barstow to put a rear stifle sign on the pylon height that is not on its property. It was done on a variant, which is a very special process where you have to come up with a very good reason of what you're doing should be allowed, even though it's not under the global guidelines. Again, being very creative. We'll be opening up a new leadership with Barstow, hopefully 5-6 months. And I might do charging stations on that lot as well. So anyway, these are some of the projects I've been working on. Obviously, we have other projects that we've started many, many years ago, along with the 48 units that we're working with in Huntington Beach that we want to start. But financing, interest rates are so high that we're waiting just a little bit to let the interest rates drop. And that's actually one thing I want to talk about for the future, how industry is changing. And one thing that have changed that I think it'll be very different for the next few decades, different than the previous decade, is interest rates. The interest rates have been in the 4 or 5% range for the last decade. Now, currently, we're at 8-9%. I do believe the interest rates will drop, but I don't believe they will go back to where they were 2 years ago, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth, for like the previous decade, which means that our borrowing costs will be high for the next, 2-3 decades, in my opinion, at least a decade. Our borrowing costs are going to be in the 5 starting, but probably 6 to 7% instead of the old 4 to 5%. So if your borrowing costs are higher, that means that you have to basically do the calculation. That's in part of your equation. So if your borrowing costs are higher, you have to buy and build for lower costs because you're paying higher interest rates to make the project and so on. You got to be more careful for the future on the construction costs and how much you're buying the land for and any other costs associated with the project. So that's something to remember for all the people who are watching, that just because the interest rates were 4 or 5%, even 3.5% only 2 years ago, don't expect that to happen in the next 2-3 years. So that's a big lesson to learn, in my view, or something of a big importance. That basically concludes my podcast and the discussion. But I look forward to seeing you guys in my next podcast. And as we've discussed, what were my successful projects, car wash, and the leadership tool, and then why. I discussed what were not successful projects, the Bubba's Chicken, the land in Palmdale that I bought, and the land in Bakersfield for commercial real estate development were our bets. We talked about some of the current developments and the current project. So I think we covered a lot of stuff today, and I hope to see you in the near future, and also that you will watch our webinar on January 15th. I did this one thing and it completely changed my career. Let me tell you about the moment I decided to make sure that any check that goes out first gets logged in the computer, the check number, the dollar amount, and the person will write the check to, and we made a copy and put it in the folder, and then that check goes out. And then we double check if that was correct and it got cashed. And once it gets cashed, we take out the previous copy in the check, discard the copy, and put the check that has got to the bank, and we put that in there. And we keep proper logs of the cash checks along with our spreadsheet where this information is logged in. And on large projects, that's very critical because after projects we're going over 3, 4, 5 years, you would have forgotten completely where we spent the money. Here's how working with Starbucks saving them. We were going to be doing a leadership tool, but instead we ended up planning to do a Starbucks and sign the Starbucks lease. And money that would be generated from a Starbucks lease to go far greater than the money we would be making in leadership. One thing I've learned that most people overlook is the demographics. A lot of people look for location, but they don't realize that location is only as good as the demographics. If the demographics do not work for the product that you're selling, it's almost like having a bad location. One of my biggest mistakes in the early days was that I did not have an office outside my home. I was working from my home. And that prevented or complicated meetings with architects, engineers, and other consultants. So anyway, I ended up getting an office outside the home, and that was a very, very good decision. Looking ahead, I see a major shift coming in real estate. Here's what I'm preparing for. I am making sure that I have additional capital or liquid capital, and I am trying to do fewer projects, but I'm trying to make sure that the projects I do are going to have a high probability of success.
Salim Development Group.